Football careers are very short. One day you're on top of the world carrying your teams to unthinkable heights, but then you blink and your name and legacy have become obsolete in the eyes of younger fans. This is an unfair reality that happens all the time. Players who once defined entire eras are now rarely mentioned, overshadowed by the rise of new stars. It's the inevitable cycle of football's constantly shifting landscape. So in this video, I decided to put 5 underrated legends back under the spotlight, giving them the recognition they truly deserve in the eyes of the younger fans. And what better way to start than with one of the most underrated Champions League winners of all time, Diego Milito. Nowadays, if a recent football fan comes across a picture of Milito, they'll probably wonder why Rocky Balboa was a football player rather than immediately recognizing this amazing striker. Still, that would be nothing new for Milito, as even during his best years, he was constantly overlooked by the football community. At the same time, it's understandable. I mean, Milito was never the most exciting youngster, and he also developed very gradually. The Argentine only left his home country at the age of 25, and he only started making some real waves at 27 when he scored 4 goals against Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey. That tournament in 2006 will always go down as the beginning of Milito's prime, when it carried Zaragoza to the final, eliminating Atletico, Barca and Real Madrid before losing to fucking Espanyol. No disrespect to the Catalonian outfit, but after such a remarkable run, winning the cup would have been the cherry on top. It wasn't meant to be, but just like Rocky, Milito simply wouldn't throw in the damn towel. In today's market, a striker who scored over 20 goals a season, including 4 against Real, would surely get a big money move, but Milito would spend the next 3 seasons between Zaragoza and Genoa bagging a total of 65 goals. Just to paint a better picture in your head, that's considerably more than half of the current 10 most valuable strikers in the whole world. And at 30 years old, it felt like time was running out for Diego Milito, but Inter's overhaul of strikers created a perfect opportunity for him to cement his legacy once and for all. Even though all eyes are on superstar signing Samuel Eto'o, Diego Milito was by far the brightest striker that year, registering 30 goals, almost double what Eto'o scored. The Argentine was influential in all competitions during the 2009-2010 season, before capping all off with a brace in the Champions League final against Bayern Munich. In essence, if you asked me to define a Ballon d'Or worthy performance, I would certainly say Diego Milito in 09-10, but when you're competing against an alien that can dribble, assist, and score almost a goal per match, you're doomed from the get-go. Either way, Milito deserved at least a podium finish that year, but it's tough to take him seriously as a contender when he was merely a tourist with no influence on Argentina's disappointing World Cup in 2010. Unfortunately, not every story has a happy ending. Milito couldn't keep his numbers up in the next few seasons due to his injuries and advanced age. To make things worse, his downfall coincided with the rise of several world-class strikers like Luis Suarez and Robert Lewandowski. And so, just 6 years after his iconic treble win, Milito quietly retired in Argentina at his boyhood team, Racing Club. Well, it's not the most grandiose ending you could ask for, but at least he wasn't kicked out of his club for not being marketable enough like the last entry in this video. For now, let's continue this history lesson with another unsung striker, Davor Shuker. When you think about Croatian football, I'm almost 100% sure the first name that pops in your head is Luka Modric. After all, he's a Real Madrid legend, a midfield maestro who's conquered 2 World Cup medals and Croatia's only Ballon d'Or winner. But before Modric could run, Shuker had to walk. Born into a family of athletes, Davor Shuker first gained notoriety in Sevilla, even playing alongside Diego Maradona in his second season in Spain. From 1991 to 1996, Shuker dazzled everyone in his path at Sevilla and took the club to another level before departing for his dream destination, Real Madrid. Unlike Modric, things clicked right away for the Croatian striker. Shuker formed a lethal trio with Mijatovic and a young Raul that immediately led Los Merengues back to the top of Spanish football. While it didn't have the same long-term impact with Real as Modric, he can definitely compete for who had the most significance for Croatia's national team. Not only did Shuker score one of the most beautiful goals in Croatia's debut at the Euros, but he also led Croatia to a 3rd place finish in their first ever World Cup, beating teams like Germany and the Netherlands along the way. Oh, and he was also the tournament's top scorer with 6 goals, if there were still any doubts about how impactful he was for the Vatreni. Obviously, if 20 years later a player emerges and now does practically everything you've accomplished, newer fans will be less compelled to know about you. but make no mistake about it, Davor Shuker is an absolute legend of the game. Next up, we have a Valencia legend who would be incredibly valuable in the club's current crisis, Gaizka Mendieta. First off, in case you didn't know, Valencia made it to 2 consecutive Champions League finals. In 2000, when they were convincingly beaten by Real Madrid, and in 2001, when they lost on penalties to Bayern Munich. They might be struggling now, looking closer to relegation than bouncing back, but in the late 90s and early 2000s, Loche were a force to be reckoned with. Much of that success was due to Gaizka Mendieta. During his prime years, Mendieta was playing at the Kevin De Bruyne level, and his influence on modern football cannot be understated. He perfectly combined defensive solidity with creative playmaking in an era where most players stuck to specific roles. However, the reason he's not as well known is largely due to his own choices. After feeling like he had reached the ceiling with Valencia, Mendieta was picked as Lazio's star signing for the 2001-02 season, where they revamped their squad and said goodbye to players like Nedved, Veron and Salas. But what made Mendieta so brilliant at Valencia was that he shared responsibilities with a well-rounded midfield. At Lazio, he had to carry a broken squad for a season, which made him look like a flop. Then, being loaned to Barcelona only to disappoint again, completely ripped his legacy apart. I'm not saying he couldn't have been better with Lazio, but it's hard to live up to the expectations when you're replacing a future Ballon d'Or winner in a club marching steadily towards bankruptcy. Mendieta also spent his prime years at a club that doesn't get as much recognition as, let's say, Real Madrid or Manchester United would. That obviously affects how well known you are in the future, as the bigger teams always get the most attention from the casual football fan. And the next player in this video fits that mold perfectly, as it's simply unbelievable how he's not a cult figure among casual fans. I'm talking about Rogério Ceni. Now, I'm not saying Ceni is one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time. I'm not even putting him in the top 5 Brazilian keepers, but that doesn't really matter because it's not his shot-stopping ability or distribution that I think he should be known for. Rogério Ceni spent his 22-year career with Brazilian giant São Paulo. Not only was he a loyal leader and solid behind the sticks, but he was also a serious attacking threat. Yeah, you heard me right. Nowadays, if a keeper gets an assist, it will be highlighted for a long time, but Ceni scored goals like it was nothing. In fact, in 2005, Rogério Ceni scored 21 times, reaching the back of the net in several important matches that led to São Paulo's conquest of the Libertadores and Club World Cup. Besides, Ceni is also an example of extreme longevity. He played until he was 42 and never once used his age as an excuse to make mistakes. When his illustrious career finally came to an end in 2015, Ceni went out with a total of 131 goals to his name. That's 85 more goals than what Man United's superhero Antony has scored as a forward. And honestly, I wonder who will end up with the most goals by the time Antony retires. To wrap up this video, we have one of the most influential yet underrated midfielders of all time, Claude Makelele. When you think of football's greatest midfielders, names like Xavi, Iniesta or even Cruyff might come to mind. But lurking in the shadows of these greats is a player who, despite defining a crucial role in the game, remained underappreciated in an era where tactical knowledge wasn't as widespread among fans as it is today. You see, Makelele's career was a masterclass in the art of defensive midfield play. He wasn't known for flashy dribbling or spectacular goals. Instead, he excelled at the unsung responsibilities of breaking up play, covering defensive gaps, and providing a solid platform for his team. Like every player in this video, Makelele was never the exciting youngster or the most sought after player. He had to climb his way up to the top, going from Nantes to Marseille, then to Celta Vigo, and finally to Real Madrid. But his rags to riches story doesn't end well. Right from the start, Florentino Perez didn't want to meet his contractual demands because he saw the French midfielder as a limited player who couldn't head the ball or make long passes. In reality though, he was the unsung hero of the Galacticos era. While stars like Zidane and Ronaldo grabbed the headlines, it was Makelele's defensive prowess that allowed them to shine. So when he was pushed out to make way for Beckham, Real entered a massive decline that they only fully overcame almost 10 years later. To add insult to injury, he was a vital piece in Mourinho's Chelsea, helping establish the club as a force to be reckoned with in Europe. Still, none of that seemed to matter during his career. Makelele never won a major trophy with France, despite playing some of his best football between 1998 and 2000. But I'm sure Claude can find some solace now when players like N'Golo Kante get the recognition they deserve despite being surrounded by a bunch of superstars. Now, all of these players achieve more recognition as the years have passed, but in some cases a player bursts onto the scene with a gigantic hype only to fizzle out and fall into complete obscurity. To find out if you still remember 5 of the unluckiest wonder kids in football history, click the video on screen. I'll see you there.